listening to BottleCAST, the official podcast of BottleCaps.
Okay. Alrighty. Well, cool, guys. Thank you guys for joining us for this episode of BottleCAST. For those listening in, I have here with me our creative team and then our multimedia team, which I'm a part of. So I'll go ahead and just give everybody a quick introduction. We have Jess here on the top left. Jess is our creative director. And then we have Kristen on the right here. She is our production manager. And then we have Kayla here next to me. Kayla is one of our newest graphic designers that we brought onto the team. And she does a lot of digital work there. So in a moment, we're gonna get into them specifically and then allow them to kind of introduce themselves briefly. So well, yeah, guys, thanks for hopping on. We'll just jump right into it. So my first question I wanted to ask you guys, just to kind of allow everybody to get a glimpse into y'all's life. Jess, can you go ahead and start by introducing yourself briefly and letting us know how you got started with BottleCaps?
Yeah, thanks for having me, Lupe. Profesh. I'm just kidding. So my name is Jessica Sanchez. I am a creative director here at BottleCaps. Little background on me: I did go to school for graphic design, visual communications at UTA. I don't know if I need to put all that in there. And I enjoy graphic design, UX design, and illustrations. So that's just a little background on myself. I got started with BottleCaps actually back in 2018, which is like kind of crazy to think about that it's already been 4 years. I feel like with the lockdown period of like 2020 to like even now, I feel like it was kind of like a time jump. But anyway, I started in 2018 during I think my senior year in college as an intern. So whenever I got brought on board, BottleCaps didn't necessarily have a graphics department at all. And it was very male dominated. So I was also one of the first females working in the space. So it was very interesting. So I was kind of in charge of everything. I was in charge of logos for some new stores that we were putting on, store packs, and then eventually it became a transition to UX and UI design, which is user experience and user interface. And user experience is basically kind of like how a product functions and the journey that the user goes through. So, for example, placing an order, and then how that works across different platforms, such as like a desktop website, your phone, and then on the apps that we build. And then UI is just kind of like the visuals of how it all works together and how like buttons look, et cetera, et cetera. So I really enjoy it just because I feel like I'm both left and right brain. So like right brain, not technically, but like a lot of people say right brain is kind of like more like the creative side and left brain is more analytical, where I feel like UX and UI, with me touching both, it's like a good way for me to kind of satisfy both of those parts of, I don't know, I guess who I am, because I do like analytical stuff, thought processes, and also still being able to be a little bit creative with it. So yeah, and now I do mostly UX and UI. And now I actually have Kristen working with me. So it's really nice to kind of see the team growing.
Right
Does
on.
that answer the question? Is that good?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. No, thank you for that. That was a perfect segue too. Kristen, tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got started with BottleCaps.
Sure. Okay. So I also went to school for graphic design. I used to live in Chicago, so it was a small private school in Chicago land area. So I got started with, there's a fly, sorry. I got started with BottleCaps back in 2020, right before the pandemic started, which is like a super weird timing. The job I had previously was my first job in the Texas area after we moved. And I was working a lot with the same like app design concept, but for different clients, not alcohol related. And big difference.
Wait, yeah. Can you expand on that? What was the
alcohol? So I actually used to work for another startup. We used to create apps and websites for churches. So very different than the alcohol industry. But I just found myself very like unhappy and unfulfilled in that job. So I was looking for a new opportunity, I think a few months before the pandemic started, because obviously if I knew the pandemic was going to happen, I probably wouldn't quit my job and try to find something new just because of the timing wise. But luckily it was right before the pandemic started and you guys gave me a chance with an interview and then accepted me. So the timing was perfect. I worked in the office for 2 weeks and then we went on lockdown.
Remote.
Yes. So it was a nice time to get to know everyone. That I'm very thankful that I had those 2 weeks at least. But yeah, that's how I got started. And now, so basically I was hired to basically help Jess out with store packs and more client services stuff. So I've really taken on that role. And along now I've been given the task to be in charge of like swag item stuff. So not only do I basically keep all the graphics, like all the client services graphics on under my umbrella, but I also get to look for new swag items, design new swag items for events and whatnot. So yeah.
Right on. Yeah, no, we're excited that you've taken that on. Kristen helps design like anything that's going to be printed and external to the company and shown out there. So very excited to use the items that she's designed. Kayla, you're up next. Very fresh. I wouldn't call it a fresh wound, but let the folks know. Fresh meat. So let us know a little bit about you and then how you got started with BottleCAST.
Yeah, for sure. And I apologize now if I'm like lethargic because it is just 8 a.m. But actually, so I'm working remote. I actually did graduate in the fine arts. I had a focus in digital media and minored in journalism, which was like the backwards way of getting into graphic design. I went into digital media kind of because I wanted to do animation and game industry kind of things. I like drawing and illustration, but unfortunately, my University of Nevada, Reno, doesn't have that built out of a program, but the graphic design program at the journalism school was really great. I found a love of graphic design, was like, oh shoot, this is actually a lot of fun, and found kind of my niche there. So I graduated spring 2021, but then was like, I need a mental break being a student in this pandemic. So I took a break for a bit, worked at a small business here in Reno and did retail for a bit, kind of helped out with a store on the back end when I could, but mainly managing the store. And then actually because my boyfriend is just graduated and we're like, okay, we're going to probably move down to Las Vegas. We're going to do all these things and like move in together. I was like, okay, I should get a remote job. Graphic design lends well to that. So, just searching through, trying to be like, ooh, where do my skills go to? And so I saw BottleCAST was like, oh, cool. The alcohol vibe. I like the description. They seem chill. And then, interviewed with Lupe and was like, oh man, I actually really want this job. So it's super cool. Super excited. And it was just the vibes were right. And I was like, man, I really want this job. Everyone seems super chill. Lupe seems really cool. And like, it's the thing of I've always had good bosses and I'm very fortunate. So it's like, I want to work for somewhere where I won't be miserable. So yeah.
Yeah, no, right on. I remember that feeling though, like scrolling through. We end up, I guess we typically use ZipRecruiter, which is obviously not sponsored by ZipRecruiter, but we use the same. I think actually we used Indeed for your search, but a job board nonetheless. And I was just like, same kind of deal. I was like, well, this looks. It sounds like it'd be cool. This was before the pandemic, so went into interview with Corey and same kind of deal. I felt the vibes were right. Everything that was being spoken was truthful. There wasn't really any red flags. It was just like, hey, it is what it is. So I got brought on as a marketing specialist, junior marketing specialist, actually, and just kind of helping build our social following, our web and social media presence, and even like at that time, like our events and things like that. So from there, of course, blossomed into multimedia director. And now I help oversee some of like our email, social, and anything digital really that gets put on the web, like this podcast here. So cool. Glad to have everybody on board. We'll go ahead and move on to our second question here, which I'll kick off to Jess first, of course, which is, what are your favorite design projects to work on? and why?
Yeah. So, some of my favorite design projects to work on, definitely, like I said, are more user experience and user interface focused. So I like them because I am solving a problem, right? And like I said, left brain, right brain, whatever. Like I like math, stuff like that. I like that there's always an answer. And so those are always my favorite because it's like, okay, like how do we get from point A to point B? How do we get this like, curbside option from, the beginning stages to where whenever you're there ready to pick it up, how do you notify the store, et cetera, et cetera. So yeah, so I think anything that requires me to do a little bit more research or just kind of see how other industries kind of handle similar problems, I really enjoy projects like that. So, like I was saying
Nice.
earlier, one of the ones that I finished recently, I don't know if I can necessarily talk about this on here. I think I can.
I'm
I don't
like,
know. It's in
oh,
it's in development. You better cut this
yeah,
out. I'm just kidding.
yeah.
But it's just like the curbside pickup feature because some of our stores offer curbside pickup. So we wanted to give the users an option to notify the store without having a call or without having a text. And so it'll kind of prompt them with like, okay, which parking spot are you parked in and what color car do you have or any additional notes that will help with them finding the right person for this order. So that was one of the features that I built out, and I just like thinking about the process of like how a person goes through the journey. So yeah, those are definitely my favorite. And I do like that my position did transition into this direction because I really do enjoy it. It really does, satisfy those both sides of myself when it comes to these things, I think.
Right
So
on.
yeah, those are my favorite.
Cool. I wanted to touch on something that you mentioned that I think really speaks well to bottle caps. And that's that you mentioned that your position transitioned to that. Like, when do you usually hear folks saying like, "Oh, I started off as this, and now I'm this"? I think it's a little more common nowadays. But I grew up with the impression that once you're in a job, like that's it. So I mean, how has that been? Like, I guess working for a company that's like willing to do that, or what was that like?
Well, yeah, so I think definitely because, Bottle Caps is a startup and whenever I joined on, it was a totally different thing. We had Curtis from sales doing all the graphic design work, top tier. He should have been the
Yeah.
creative director. No, but I think just because of how it is and how the space is, and we were just such a small team that it kind of gives that flexibility of not only do we need these things, but it's also like, okay, well, let me see how I can challenge myself to learn these other things.
Mm,
And of course, the transition, I feel like it happened a lot faster than I think maybe other places would be. So, so yeah, so I don't know. I
yeah.
really enjoy that it did come to that way, and just because they say in startups you wear many hats, UX and UI just became one of the other hats on top of the creative direction of other things. So
Wh- to add to that, what would you say to somebody that is like wanting to do that? Like they want to transition over to something that they feel they would benefit from, or the company would benefit from. Like, what's some advice you'd give to somebody in that position?
definitely do your research obviously. Try to have something ready and then present it to, whoever's above you,
Mm,
and then show why this would also benefit. Because I feel like at the end of the day, there's like no idea that could be like a horrible idea. And plus, it's not only growing you, but in a way, it'll also be growing your company. It'll be adding something additional that they didn't have before. Because obviously, whenever I joined, like there was no design department. We didn't have like a UX, UI designer here. So it just kind of helped in that way. But yeah, I would definitely say do the research, um try to prepare something to kind of present as to like why we need it, because everything, any product, anything in UX specifically, there is a UX need for it and there's always
mm.
things that can be improved. So it would definitely be that, and then also just get some resources together as to what could help with you learning these things. Maybe there's some courses, maybe there's some certifications, and then also just taking taking the initiative, I think, is the main thing. Taking the initiative to learn these things and kind of, um, I keep saying
Yeah, you're
taking the
fine.
initiative to learn about these things, whether it gets approved or not, I think is still going to be beneficial for you. And then showing that you're trying to learn these new things, I think it's just going to be beneficial in the long run.
Yeah.
Does that
Right on.
answer it? I don't even know if I
Yeah,
answered
I
that.
mean, yeah, no, I like that you mentioned, that doing some research on it and basically presenting that to the company and showing them why it would value them. So great, Jess. Thank you so much for that answer. So Kristen, can you go ahead and let us know what are some of your favorite design projects to work on and why?
Sure. So right now, currently, I think my favorite project to work on is to design swag items, just because my main job is to do all the client services stuff, which are web banners, app banners, store packs. And I feel like that can get a little tedious, and sometimes clients, don't reply super fast. So whenever I just need a break from the same things, I like to design swag stuff for new up and coming events, and researching new items for events such as like our golf event we had a couple months ago, and finding like golf koozies. That was really fun, and just getting a budget from the company and seeing what I can use with that money to make sure we are getting the most fun items to give out to our clients or not, to people, events, giveaways. Yeah, I think it's just a nice break from apps and store packs.
No, right on. We're gonna cover the cities with the stickers that you designed. So everywhere you see that, you might even see people just kind of share that stuff out. Hopefully, you don't get any legal action on that. But well, cool. Thanks for sharing that, Kristen. And all right, Kayla, your turn. Let us know what are some of your favorite. Excuse me. Let me do that again. I'm like Kayla. Your turn here. So, what are some of your favorite design projects to work on?
Yeah, I haven't gotten too much outside of emails, but honestly, the emails and like specifically the header images have been kind of fun. The themed emails, like we had one for Cinco de Mayo, and I just love doing that and thinking of like, okay, what's the imagery associated with Cinco de Mayo, and like what's the colors, and thinking about all that fun stuff versus the dedicated and stuff is obviously in its time and place. But things like themes, I feel a lot more in my element because I just love messing with ideas and throwing it around a little more creatively. But yeah, the themed stuff is a lot of fun, and so seeing what we can do with like the next batch of emails is a lot of fun. It was fun also just like messing with the swag items and trying to think of like, oh, what do I want to mess with and design? And I was like, oh, typography and like cool and funky fonts are something that I actually really want to work on, and like this is an opportunity too. So yeah, stickers are a lot of fun. I'd love to do more swag stuff in tandem with Kristen in the future.
Heck
Hey,
yes.
there you go, collab. Some of my favorite projects to work on or to design on are, of course, video. I have a video background. I love telling stories. I love communicating a message that's going to impact people, whether it be honestly for good or bad, but just putting out a message that's going to, in my eyes, live on forever. I guess as long as we have servers up and running, it'll technically live out forever. So I love telling stories visually. And so that's been one of my favorite things to work on is any sort of video work that we need for our company. Okay, cool. So Jess, next question here. How has working in the BevAlc space challenged your design capabilities?
Yeah, so I think the ways that it has challenged is kind of like with some of the legalities behind it, I guess it'd be a way to kind of put it. Kind of like including disclaimers on websites that we make, maybe things for like images, because we don't want people to get sued, for example, or also even when it comes to like making sure that there's ways to kind of check the age limits, right? So like we always have to make sure there's like a pop-up that's like 21 plus, et cetera, et cetera. And then some things we're a little bit limited to. I'm trying to think what are some of the main things that kind of pop up. But I think one of the challenges is whenever it comes to like working with more established brands, they'll have like their own brand guidelines and just trying to make it work even with our branding. Sometimes that can be a little bit of a challenge. It's definitely a lot funner to work in, I think. Not that I worked in so many different, departments or anything, but I kind of feel like when it does come to alcohol, it's usually like, like a more fun thing to kind of advertise. You can kind of go many different directions for things. And also when it comes to campaigns, sometimes we have the freedom to create them for them within some guidelines. But for the most part, I think it's pretty fun because of all the things that kind of come with alcohol, right? Like we're making memes or we're talking about partying or we're talking about, um, you know, I don't know, just trying to get like a bunch of stuff for all the fun things that are going on, like quinceañeras or like 1-year olds' birthday parties, which we're still working on. But
Yeah.
just stuff like that. I feel like sorry, I forgot the question. Can you tell me it one more time?
No, you're good. How is working in the BevAlc space challenge your design capabilities?
Oh, okay, there we go.
Um,
I guess also like when it comes to the e-commerce side of it, right? It's like we didn't have an e-commerce website before. Bottle Rover was a new thing that we developed after I became an intern. So I had to kind of like hit the ground running and figure out how to make e-commerce, an e-commerce website and how to design it. How do we show the products? How do we show the different sizes? So I feel like that kind of stuff definitely was challenging for me, especially as like someone fresh out of college or in college about to exit. Was like, okay, let me do all this research and see what needs to be visible. And I think one of the biggest challenges was showing a product and then trying to pinpoint which other stores carried that product. So a way to kind of like seamlessly shop different stores for the same product. So yeah.
Gotcha. Yeah, it almost seems like you played. What are those folks called that they organize like the products in the stores, like the merchandisers or something like that?
Yeah, I kind of
Yeah,
played
this.
inventory there or something. I was just like,
Yeah.
okay, how do I show this? But I would say one of the funnest things though was definitely working on the website and app for Sire Spirits. So working with 50 Cent's team, really
Wow.
crazy to think about because it's like, you're like in middle school, whatever, listening to 50 Cent or whatever. And then it's like, oh, I didn't know that future me would be working, with his company. So I think that was also definitely one of like the more fun things that I could definitely pinpoint from working in this industry and working for BottleCAST. And I feel like that was a really cool experience for sure.
You were in middle school jamming in the club? What's that about?
Yeah, I wasn't even in the club. I was in art club, maybe. I'm just kidding. I don't even know. I forget what year like all these came out. I don't even remember if maybe I was in 5th
2002.
grade. And I wasn't even in elementary school. I don't know. Time blurs
Wow.
after a while, but I just remember being a kid and listening to 50 Cent, and then it's like, who would have thought that like if I told little kid me like, hey, you're gonna make his like app and website, like crazy,
That's
crazy,
awesome.
crazy moment. But yeah.
Cool. Kristen, let's pop over to you. What are some challenges in designing in the BevAlc space for you?
I guess on a more personal note, like I'm not a big drinker. I like went to a private Christian school for college and I just didn't really grow up watching like my parents drink or anything. So I think just joining this team has been a fun challenge just because I didn't know a lot about the alcohol industry at all. So I've learned a lot and just even like little things if someone from the client services team asks for a specific brand or something or a specific whiskey to make an app banner, I have to like quickly Google just because I don't know. So I think that's the biggest challenge for me just personally, but it's been a lot of fun just because now I'm interested to like my husband drinks casually. So if we go walk around the liquor store, then I can see all these bottles and brands that I'm like, oh, we've done programming with them. And oh, that's a pretty label. So, Jack,
Yeah.
can you buy this because it's a pretty label? So it's been fun to learn more about the alcohol industry in general. But I think it's been a fun challenge just because I've gotten to see more brands. I'm way more exposed, obviously, now. So I mean, I still wouldn't say I'm a heavy drinker. Like I still I prefer like my kitty cocktails or like sugary cocktails where I can't really taste the alcohol. But it's been fun to see all the brands and see all these brands in the liquor stores and say, ooh, they're really fancy. And, we program with them. So it's been fun.
Nice.
I think also, sorry, I just wanted to add,
No, yeah, you guys
like when
feel
it comes
free.
to like programming and then like also some of the campaigns that they do end up coming up with, some of the campaigns are really cool. And it's also really nice to kind of get to look at the assets and how they tend to build some of their graphics sometimes whenever we get some of the, like raw files and stuff to work with. So it's also really cool to be like, ooh, like they're kind of doing this campaign. That's really cool. Or okay, how can we integrate that with like, I'm sure for Kayla, with like how she was saying with like the programming with the Cinco de Mayo, which was like a really cool email. You should like show right here. You should show right here like a little screenshot of
Right.
the email she did. But yeah, no, I think that's also a good way to kind of bring it up. And also how it goes in different directions, right? Like it's not just alcohol, but it's also like recipes
Oh,
or
yeah,
like,
true.
campaigns or like I don't know. I just feel like it goes in so many different ways that you can
Like,
manipulate, I guess, alcohol
yeah,
or put it into different things.
I almost get like a visual of like the alcohol bottle or the brand being a personality, right? Because
Yeah.
somebody had to start it. There's a story behind every bottle, so to speak. So when it's introduced to us, like the design and multimedia team, we have to kind of like check them out. Like, what's this person's vibe or what's this bottle's vibe? How do we design across that and make the end result look and feel like them through us? So yeah,
Mm-hmm.
that's been cool to see you guys design through that stuff.
And then one more thing I did want to add. Sorry, I didn't mean to
No,
like.
you're good. You're good.
Blah, blah, blah. But one of the cooler things that we were working with, I don't know if it's just in the tester app. I forget if it's in the Bottle Rover app yet, or if this is still in the works. So you might have to cut this out, Lupe. I don't know.
No,
But I was
you're
gonna
good.
bring up how some brands have AR capabilities and how
Yeah,
we've been working to integrate them into our app as an additional part of the user experience.
yeah, that's live. And you guys should
Yeah.
check it out. You guys listening, check it out. Go to Bottle Rover, open up the app, and then with some of the products that you shop, there'll be an icon there that activates web AR, and it gives you a whole experience based off that brand, and if
Mm-hmm.
that brand has specifically activated it. And brands listening in, if you are interested in activating something like that and already possess the assets and stuff for it, let's say from other campaigns, well, we work with a company known as BevAlc. And Sean, he helps you from start to finish. If you are as super experienced, unexperienced, he helps you utilize those assets and through our platform. So it's just a great experience for the user at the end of the day. But no, yeah, thanks for mentioning that, Jess.
Yeah, really
Okay,
fun to see how it's been integrated.
for sure. Kayla, let's kick it off to you. What are some of the challenges? I know you're pretty fresh into the team, but what are some of the challenges that you've or design challenges that you've kind of faced working here?
Yeah, for sure. I'm similar to Kristen. I turned 21 and then the pandemic happened, so I couldn't like go out and drink and like do all the fun college 21 stuff. Like, I mean, I went to like my first liquor store immediately at midnight just because that was the haha funny thing to do when you're 21. And so, just bought soda and was like, oh my God, right? But learning about alcohol and just general, I still am like, I don't know the difference between like I kind of like I like beers, but I'm like, what's stout? What's like all these things, right? And like learning. But in terms of design, one of the biggest things that I just kind of noticed as I was designing was looking at specifically the emails from like a marketing perspective that the programming team is a lot more familiar with because like my brain is so fine-tuned to fine art and graphic design, and although it's close to, oh, what does the client want, it's very much okay, how do we shift it in terms of like how do we want to market to a customer and how do we want to engage our customers, a little more technical, and it feels so much more like salesy, so I'm not as familiar with that. So like having the programming team telling me what to do, it's like, oh, okay, I can see this perspective now because I've never engaged with it much, just because in a sense in college you are in a little bit of a bubble depending on your major. But yeah, thinking about those things, and then on top of like the hat wearing stuff with startups in general, seeing that I have to like maybe mess with HTML and CSS. I did computer science specifically at one point in college and was like, I don't want to do coding. So seeing it again in the context of graphic design, I was like, okay, this is not as hard as like coding a calculator on my computer versus, it's a lot more, just changing values and seeing that stuff and having instant gratification instead of like the computer science aspect of coding being like, oh, I forgot a semicolon and now my whole code doesn't work.
Way less ones and zeros for sure.
Yep, for sure.
Right
A lot
on.
less. But yeah, those are the main things I noticed.
Sweet. Appreciate that. So working in the BevAlc space has really challenged me to kind of figure out how we're going to communicate our products. And what I mean by that is, I work with the B2B side and the B2C side, Bottle Rover and BottleCAST. And just differentiating those two has been constant challenge for me since day one, because for one, they're similar in name, and two, it's just like, wait, so these liquor stores deliver the alcohol, or what's Bottle Rover, what's BottleCAST? Beyond that, just kind of really predicting human behavior and communicating a message that's going to hopefully lead people to make a purchase or a conversion. It's fun to work and design on items that are related to celebrations and having a good time. All right. What I've been looking forward to, we're going to kick it off to a segment that we have on here called the Back to Background.
Back to back like I'm on the cover of Lethal Weapon. I'm too old for this.
I'm pretty sure it's done by now. So, all right.
Okay,
So that's
go ahead.
It's our back to background, guys. And this round, what we're going to do is everybody's going to give one word answers. If you need to, you can probably bridge into like 2, maybe 3 words. And it's going to be a rapid round of questions that's going to help the audience kind of get to know you a little bit. Some of them might just be, oh, no big deal. Some of them might be personal. Some of them might pull out some deep, dark
personal
secrets. Yeah.
Oh man. Strike it from the record. Just kidding.
With that said, we're going to go, I think what we're going to do is everybody's going to go through the full round, and then we're going to go to the next person. Okay. So
Okay.
Jess, here goes. You ready?
Okay, I'm ready.
All right. So answer these questions in as few words as possible. Okay. So number 1, hometown.
Dallas.
Number 2, favorite sports team, any sport.
Pass. Venus Williams.
Sports ball. Great.
Sports ball.
3, favorite drink.
Pass.
Pass.
I don't know what my favorite. Okay, mezcal. We'll put that. Sorry.
Hey, there you go. Favorite food.
Chinese.
You have a pet? If so, I need their name.
No pet. R.I.P.
Oh man. R.I.P.
Dang, don't make me cry.
All right.
Just
Greatest fear.
Cheekies. We'll do cheekies. I'm just kidding.
Cheekies?
Yeah, I will say cheekies.
What is Cheekies?
She's a Chihuahua.
There you
She's
go.
with my mama.
Chihuahua
Well,
Cheekies. Cheekies the Chihuahua.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Greatest fear.
Greatest fear. Deep oceans.
Favorite music genre.
Rap.
Pet peeve.
Chewing with your mouth open.
All right. Somewhere you want to travel.
Ireland.
Sum up an embarrassing moment in one word.
Ooh, swimming pool. That's 2 words, but
all right.
pool.
That wraps up Jess's back to background. Thank you, Jess.
Mm-hmm.
Wait, what'd you have to add?
I was gonna say wave pool specifically.
Oh my gosh.
We'll say wave pool, but it was horrible, and that's all I'm
Wave
gonna say about that.
Oh man. Dang. Okay. Well, stay away from deep oceans and wave pools. How about that?
Yeah.
All right, Kristen. Drum roll. Da-da-da-da. Well, now you kind of got a glimpse of it.
Yeah,
But
true.
let's run through
For
this quick.
real.
All right.
Hometown.
Chicago.
Favorite sports team, any sport.
Cubs. Chicago Cubs.
Favorite drink.
Pina coladas.
Favorite food.
Sushi.
Do you have a pet? If so, I need their names.
2 corgis, Flynn and Winnie.
Greatest fear.
Birds.
I knew that was coming.
Specifically parrots and chickens and owls.
Oh, I'm sorry, I forgot about that,
Chickens.
Kristen. I forgot about that, Kristen. Wow.
Wow.
That's
Well,
right.
we know what we're getting you for your birthday.
Please don't. I'll cry.
A parakeet.
No.
Is it because they're related to dinosaurs? I'm just kidding.
I don't like, do you want me to get into this?
Sure.
Okay, so parrots specifically, okay, most birds, I don't like their beady eyes. They scare me. I feel like they're staring into my soul. I also don't like the idea of feathers and like their feet, like their claws. Chickens, I just don't like the way like their neck moves. Like it scares me. If like one's chasing me, like I will probably pee myself. Owls, I feel like they just know too much. And most birds, I don't like the idea, like, okay, so like
She said
dogs,
that owls are sus.
they are. And like most birds, I feel like I just stare at them and like I don't know where their body is, if that makes sense. And that scares me because like their feathers are so fluffy. And I feel like if I were to squeeze one, I don't know if like what will happen.
Oh my god.
That's
But I
man.
can't stand birds. I can't.
Well, greatest fear unlocked.
Yeah.
All right.
I
Okay,
can't.
cool. Moving on. Favorite music genre.
Indie,
Pet peeve.
being late.
Somewhere you want to travel.
Tokyo.
Sum up an embarrassing moment in one word.
Can I say 2 words? Public speaking.
Yeah.
Or
Oh,
speech.
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 Oh man. All righty, Kayla. We're moving on to you. We should be able to speed through this. Here we go. Hometown.
Reno.
Favorite sports team.
I'm a sports team, but Yuzuru Hanyu.
Wait, what?
Yuzuru Hanyu. It's figure skating. I don't want to get into it.
Right on, right on.
Cool.
Nice. Favorite drink.
Soju.
Favorite food.
Sushi. Also.
Do you have a pet? If so, I need their names.
One Maltese Cody, a little stray cat Mary.
Nice. Greatest fear.
Art block.
Oh my goodness. Favorite music genre.
K-pop.
A pet peeve.
Longer than one word, but not keeping your word on things.
Right on. Somewhere you want to travel.
Japan and Korea.
Sum up an embarrassing moment in one word.
Toilet paper.
All right, guys, that is the back-to-back round. Some of these questions remain unanswered.
All right, you ready for the back-to-back round, Lupe?
All right.
Yeah, because I was gonna say earlier, I was like, is anybody asking you any questions? All right, Lupe, here we go. Back-to-back speed questions to get to know you. All right. First one, go. Hometown.
Dallas.
Favorite sports team.
Dallas Cowboys.
Favorite drink.
A West Coast IPA.
Oh, specific. Favorite food.
Pizza.
What kind?
Pepperoni.
Do you have a pet? What are their names?
Yeah, I have a Maltese. His name's Ollie.
Ollie. Okay. Greatest fear.
Oof.
I think I already know the answer for that one. Just kidding.
Greatest fear, being alone.
Whoo! I was gonna say failure, but that's a good one.
Yeah. Second is failure.
Next one, favorite music genre.
I would say dark trap.
Okay. Pet peeve.
Being interrupted.
Ooh. Oops. Somewhere you want to travel.
I want to travel to Spain.
Hey. Go get your ticket. Sum up an embarrassing moment in one word.
Bladder.
Ooh, yeah. Okay. That's pretty good. Okay, cool. Speed round done.
Cool. Thank you guys for joining us for that.
Back to back like I'm on the cover of Lethal Weapon. I'm too old for this shit.
Okay, cool, guys. Thank you so much for the back-to-back round there. Always love that. It kind of takes us into some of your experiences and lets everybody get to know you better. So apologies for any repercussions you'll get from some of these embarrassing answers. But yeah, so I wanted to get into something that I think is very relevant to this day and age, to this conversation. And that's, how do you get yourself out of a design/creative block? I know I have a little recipe that I'll share too, but let's kick it off to Jess first. And then you guys feel free to like relate or cross-conversate, whatever you want. Jess?
I got out of a creative block by crying and screaming. I'm just kidding. No, I like to look at other different types of work. So I'll try to look at other illustrations, different illustration styles. Sometimes I'll try to recreate something that I really like. So if there's a really cool design, I'll try to recreate it in my own way and kind of draw inspiration from there. That way it's like I don't have to think about it too much, right? And it's kind of more so about the practice of doing creative things instead of like waiting for inspiration, I guess. So yeah, so I'll try to recreate something that I really like and try to make my own thing out of it. Obviously not for like, to like sell or anything like that. I think it's just more so of like a practice or like
just getting
I guess
started.
it is just, yeah, I think practice is the best way to kind of put it, right? Because it's just kind of like you kind of look and I try to like dissect how they may have done a certain effect or something like that, and then I try to figure it out on my own and try to get it not necessarily as close to that, but like an inspired piece from there. And then I feel like after that it just kind of like rolls into different projects, newer projects, and then with like that little bit of inspiration kind of tied in. So I'll do that, or I'll try to take like a little mini break and just kind of like step away from the screen, because most of my stuff I tend to do stuff mostly digitally. Sometimes I'll do stuff traditionally. But it's just like, okay, let me just step away from the screen. Let me not think about it for a minute, and let me go try to, indulge in something else that I also enjoy, or like reading something for like a minute, so that it's like using my imagination in a different way. So yeah, so either I'll try to recreate something that I really like and take inspiration from that to make something else, or I was going to say something and I totally forgot.
That's okay.
Or I will unplug for a minute until I'm ready to get back into it. So,
right
yeah.
on. Kristen, anything to add? Or how do you get past creative block?
Similar to Jess, I really liked her answer about like finding other like artists or inspiration and trying to recreate that, but not to sell, obviously, or promote as your own artwork. I think that's a really good, as Jess said, practice to just get your mindset differently from the mundane work that you do every day. Just piggybacking off of that, just looking on like Instagram or Pinterest, just different art styles sometimes helps me, just because I feel like my art style is very outside of what I do every day with bottle caps. My art style is it's like cartoonish, I guess, but just to see different styles of what other artists can do, trying to see like, oh, how can I improve my stuff and whatnot. And I really liked what Jess said about like reading. I just got a library card, so just trying to like unplug and just, do something different than staring at a screen 24/7. I know sometimes I get on TikTok, but then I realize I'm going from one screen to another.
Yeah.
So I just need to
that's how it always is. Yeah.
Right. So
it's like I'm gonna leave my big screen and go back to my tinier screen.
Exactly. And sometimes that just doesn't help me like get inspired with art stuff. It just distracts me from what I could be doing artistically. So yeah, I think just finding other artists, what I like, what they're doing, just trying to find inspiration of what I like, and that even just gives me motivation to, hey, maybe I just need a break from this project and try to work on a different project. And then also just reading.
Right
I like
on.
physical books too, because if I go to Kindle, that's another screen and distractions.
Gotcha.
So, yeah.
Nice. Kayla, what about you? How do you get out of creative or design block?
It is almost exactly the same. I think like for me, because I grew up as like the traditional artist doing illustration, drawing. So like even though I have like a Cintiq and an iPad, I still like to go back and specifically figure drawing. I always love drawing people, and that's just a product of me being a hyper nerd into like anime and manga. But like drawing people, drawing characters is something I really love. So like getting into the foundations of like the human form and stuff like that makes me really happy. So I'm actually in a creative block with my own stuff right now. So it's just like, but outside factors kind of affecting like stress. But things like watching what visual developers do. And on YouTube, I follow a lot of visual developers who break down, shapes and form, very basic art fundamentals that make me like, I just like the human form and it's fun to draw. And I love drawing characters and stories and storytelling. So that's kind of what I like to do. And then on top of that, like reading obviously is also like what everyone else is saying. It makes me happy. Even though my books are like a little more niche than other genres, but holding a book, smelling the pages is another thing I absolutely love. And then the books that I have also do have like illustrations and seeing like obviously the characters that I love and them being illustrated and being like, oh man, I'm inspired. On top of that, like I really miss doing cosplay and costuming and like designing and styling wigs and sewing and all that. And like now that conventions are a little more open again, I'm like, oh, maybe get back into that scene when stuff slows down a bit. But finding like the different niches for me, like I am just so spread out over various mediums that I just have to try to go to each that to see like what'll get me back into it. And then obviously too, just seeing what other people are making is like one of the big things that inspires me and that gets me back into like drawing.
Nice. And for the folks listening in, what are you reading? Just anybody that's listening in. You're like, don't say. You don't have to say it. I mean,
I was like, don't expose me a little bit.
Right.
Okay.
She's about to be exposed.
No,
No,
yeah,
just
you
kidding.
don't have to, man.
I've
Okay.
been reading, I'll say what I'm reading. I'm reading All About Love by Bell Hooks. I've been reading it on and off again, but it's very insightful. A lot of people always recommend it. There's a reason why it's very well known and I recommend it to everybody. But obviously it's not a fiction. It's more like her talking about love in general as a whole, but it's kind of nice to read because it just kind of makes you reflect a lot on like your relationships with people in general and also those like that you're close to. But yeah, I recommend that book.
Right on. Okay, well, I can get into mine. Mine's not as similar, but a lot of crying. I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
Partially kidding.
Crying
Right?
and screaming.
Yeah, but no, it is a little similar. So one thing I like to do is music. I'll put on my headphones, my over the ears that have a little more noise canceling, and then I just kind of drone my exterior thoughts out, if that makes sense, and that's how I hone into what I'm doing. Because otherwise, it is the little screen that I like, just kind of scroll on, and then comparison kicks in, and that basically helps, or that paralyzes me, and sometimes. So it is for me. It's a little bit of getting inspired by other people. I understand and relate why you guys would do that too. I think that that's something that artists dating a long time ago do. You hear people talk about they get inspired by Da Vinci or by this person or that person. I don't think that that's necessarily biting on people's work. I think that as humans, our brain doesn't work like that. Like we don't have like a blank slate that we can just
Yeah.
kind of like start from. It's got to get triggered from experiences, from inspiration, like you guys say. So similar thing with me is I get inspired by other video creators, by other folks that are in the digital space. But I'm careful with it because otherwise I fall into that comparison trap. But the biggest thing that I've always lean on is music, and I just kind of drill myself out with it, and that helps trigger my imagination too, because songs have stories, and then you kind of just pick up on why they made decisions to say certain things. And then I visualize like my own version of call it a music video or whatever you want. But that's how I get out of creative block. All right, guys. Well, thank you so much for your time and for hopping on here. Honestly, this is not the last time you guys are going to be on here. I'd love to have you guys on here again and talk about some more design work, some more industry knowledge, and honestly, where we were for this episode and then for the future episode, and compare that. See what's up, see what's changed. But with that said, thank you for joining us for this episode of BottleCAST. Talk to y'all later.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks everybody for joining and watching.
Thanks for listening to BottleCAST, the official podcast of Bottle Caps. We'll see you guys in the next episode. Cheers.